Hey guys, this is Moo Power here, and well, previously known as Razor, but Moo Power is my new username. And here I'm doing a Protoss versus Terran standard build order. So I'm not the best player by any means for Brood War, but I have played in the past for some years, and I kind of know what the meta game is, and all the certain timings. But yeah, here I'm just trying to practice my macro against Terran computer. Um, Obviously it's not much of a challenge against the computer, but it's just strictly to practice one skill, which is my macro. For those that don't know the term, it just means how quickly you can amass a huge army and just maximize your production. So the other spectrum of that would be micro, so how well you control your units. So based on how, not, it's very, you'd have to be a very good player like a pro gamer or Flash or someone like Bisu to, micromanage your units as well as staying on top of your production. Because you can't be everywhere at once. You have to, just blaze through each action really quickly and then move on to the next thing. So here I'm just, as you notice, I'm kind of spamming back and forth between my base and my probe to make sure that my probe survives as long as possible to scout. The reason why I scout the computer, even though I know what it's gonna do because it's a computer, is to practice the multitasking of scouting in the Terran's base. So I know it's gonna just do an Eminem rush or just standard, well, not standard, but just the computer likes to do Eminem against Protoss for some reason, and never goes like a standard tech build. Uh, but in any case, it's good to practice. Now here I'm doing a fast expand. I do expand after the first Dragoon, and I don't get range right away, so I can get the Nexus pretty quick. Now I'm trying to. I'm actually not sure if the Dragoon range is going to be very important against certain Terran pushes, like they call it the FD push. I don't remember what that stands for, but it basically means a Terran comes with a tank or two with vultures that lay mines, and then they have like 5 or 6 Marines with a couple SCVs. Maybe sometimes not even maybe just like 1 or 2 SCVs, but basically the Marines are like fodder units, and then the tank does a lot of damage by kiting your Dragoons, because tanks have more range than Dragoons, while the Marines just kind of tank all the hits. So if you're not too careful and you let the tank keep hitting your goons without outranging the tank, because the Marines are going to be in the front, so you want to pick off the Marines without getting hit by the tank. So it's kind of like a cat and mouse game in that sense if you're going an FD push. But so far in competitive play, every time I get FD pushed, I lose because my micro isn't that great. But again, I'm just strictly practicing my macro. I strongly believe as humans we tend to try to improve one skill at a time, or that's the most effective way to learn, I feel, is to just master one skill and then move on to the next, and then just accumulate all those skills at the end. But yeah, against FD push, it's very strong against fast expand if the Protoss doesn't micro well enough, because the tanks will hit the Dragoons, and the Dragoons have too many targets, especially with Vulture Mines. They just lay around, and if you're not too careful, you're obviously going to get killed. So you have to have like really good micro against an FD push. That's just my phone going off. But anyway, so here I'm trying to. Obviously, this is just a fast expand into a third base. So I'm going a very macro build heavy, just very high macro build, where I just power through and expand as much as possible. I'm not doing a very good job microing those Dragoons, but I'm trying to multitask as well. So I get the observer, um, even though I know what he's doing, I'm positioning the observer as I would if I was playing a regular Terran. So I just have to deal with this Eminem army and then just deal with the uh, just I just have to deal with this Eminem army and just proceed as if I was playing a regular Terran. That's kind of what you have to do if you're practicing against a computer for build orders. So it's actually good practice. I actually kind of like that they do an Eminem push instead of just walling in and doing nothing, because at least it gives me some multitasking to do while I'm macroing up. So here, so other than like very early pushes like the FD push, Terran can also do two factories, which two factories completely counters fast expand. So if you go fast expand and you see that the Terran goes two factory, you have to like plop down like two more gateways just to catch up in production, because he's going to be pumping out two tanks at a time, and usually they push when they have like five or six tanks. Um, Maybe it's been a while, maybe like 4 to 6 tanks. I know that's a quite a range, but basically they push out with a lot of tanks, and then all they do is just rally their vultures to your natural expansion if you did a fast expand. So if you're not, um, but yeah, his production will outnumber you, especially with the vulture mines. You just cannot deal, because his tanks will most likely survive as long as he's not too careless with them, and then his vultures will just keep coming and reinforcing. So while you're losing your dragoons and trying to trade with his vultures, for him that's a very good trade while he's keeping all his tanks alive and dealing so much damage. So as a Protoss, you want to be careful about two factory pushes. It's not too common. Most Terrans like to play very conservative as well. They usually either do their own fast expansion with siege tank and vulture mines, or do an FD push. FD push is kind of conventional too. It's not something out of the ordinary or takes a lot of extra preparation. It doesn't hurt their economy at all, or if any. Maybe the couple SCVs, but that's pretty much it. But yeah, here I'm obviously trying to scout as if it was a regular Terran, try to um, stay on top of my multitasking, because obviously Terran is not just going to do nothing. I have to assume that I'm playing a worthy Terran that's going to be roaming around the map. I got to be patrolling my Dragoons and just kind of practicing as if I was playing against a real opponent, because obviously the computer's no challenge. But that's kind of what I'm trying to do while macroing up. So if you're new to Brood War, or you just want to practice, what I would first suggest is to um, just purely focus on macro. Don't even bother about scouting at first. But then once you get to a point where macro becomes a little more second nature to you, like you don't have to be, you're not always late on producing units when you have the money, then you should start incorporating multitasking into that macro. So that way you can do both at a time without sacrificing one or the other. So, once the key thing is just once it becomes second nature, where you're not having to devote extra energy or effort to do that particular skill, then that's where it becomes more natural. And that's why you see pro gamers like easily like deflecting certain harassments or strategies while maintaining their productions. So here I'm getting my fourth base. So it's about like, I started the game around 1 minute before recording, so this is around like the 10-minute mark. So around 10 minutes, having a 136 supply is pretty decent. I mean, if I had no harassment done, I think I could probably get it to 150 maybe. But so yeah, my macro is not completely perfect, but it's still pretty good. And of course, this is assuming I haven't been harassed, or the Terran didn't do like vulture drops or anything like that. So all that comes into play. So this is, basically if everything went perfectly to what I wanted, and I didn't have to deal with, any timing pushes that Terran does. Because other than the initial pushes that Terran does, like the FD push or the 2 factory, they do have like a 4 or 6 factory timing push. So obviously the more factories is going to be a slower push, but for the 4 factory there's a certain timing window where if I get greedy and I get a third expansion without having enough units to deal with, 4 production unit number of units from 4 factories, pumping at that rate, then I could just be bulldozered and just not have a chance. So, and then the 6 factory is just a little bit less, or a little less fast, but it's more powerful, obviously. But yeah, I'm not too particular on the timings on each, because it's been a while. But I just do know, I remember dealing with them when I was playing Brood War back in the day. Yeah, so I'm just trying to macro it up, add more gateways. And you see my gateway placement, I just kind of, it's good to kind of have a general idea where you should place your pylons, because obviously you need to, make sure it has enough radius to cover a certain area. So I try to place my pylons to where I know it'll cover a good area, and then kind of put it in a block where I can like click very quickly in succession. So obviously it would help with my macro. Yeah, so another thing to do with macro, once you get a decent sized army, it's very important to hotkey everything. So what I like to do for my hotkeys, if you don't know, or if you would like some tips, I usually hotkey my first Dragoon, or at least my first control group of Dragoons, as 1. Then for me, I mean, you can hotkey whatever you want, but for me, what makes sense for me logically is 2 I reserve for like drops, like shuttles. So 2 is like, in my head I know 2 is like an important unit, like if I was doing a drop or reavers in the shuttle. And then 3 is just another group of ground units, like another group of Dragoons or Zealots. And then 4, 5, and 6, 7 is just whatever just any units that are ground units. So if I go carriers, then I'm probably going to hotkey it like 2. Unless I get a lot more carriers, then I'll re-hotkey them to like 1. It just kind of depends on the situation, but most of the time I just follow this hotkey guideline. Is just 1, 3, 5, 6, 7 is my fighting units, and then 2 is for my shuttle or flying units. Like in PvZ, where you make Corsairs, Corsair is obviously going to be my second hotkey. So that's what makes sense for me. I'm not saying you have to follow that, but that's just what makes sense in my mind. And notice how I'm re-routing all my gateways that I just recently built. That way I don't have to, babysit where the units pop out. I just know everything is going to be in one location. So as I'm making the gateway, I rally those points.